Welcome today formally to our webinar, and today's topic is how to reduce inbound call volumes. Judging by the number of people who've already dialed in and have registered, it certainly seems to be a topic that is resonating with our audience. So I'm delighted to welcome two speakers to today's webinar. First of all, to Phil Anderson from the forum, and Phil, you're going to be sharing some of the experience of some of your members today.
Absolutely, yeah. So I've put together just a few slides around how to reduce inbound calls, but again, all of this is based upon the years of experience that we've got. It is a constant challenge for our members year on year. That seems to be what they need to do. So yes, I will be talking about that. So thank you very much.
Excellent, and I'm delighted to welcome to his first call center helper webinar, Rich Garrett from Jacada. Rich, if you'd like to introduce yourself, your role, and a little bit about what Jacada does.
Thank you. So my name is Rich Garrett. I've been in the customer experience and call automation, call deflection, contact center space since about 2002. Currently, I am Director of Solutions Consulting and Pre-Sales for Jacada. At Jacada, we deliver solutions that accelerate the customer experience in order to drive both self-service improvement, generating cost reduction, as well as improve revenue and overall deepen the relationship that enterprises have with their customers. And I've put together a few slides today that will hopefully show you how some of the technology we bring to bear can help with those things.
Excellent. And also, if you want to see a replay today, it will be on callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars about an hour after we start. If you're not already logged into the chat room, it's at callcenterhelper.com/chat. It is a separate window, so if you open up the chat room, log in, put it on one side of your screen, put the webinar on the other side. That's what most people tell me they use. The added advantage of being logged into the chat room is that you can also download the webinar slides from there. So once you're logged in, you'll see this little link on the top right hand side, and you can get both Phil and Rich's slides from there. There is an added advantage that you can type your tip or question into the bottom of the screen if you use hashtag tip if you have a tip, or hashtag question if you have a question, and we can separate those out. There is an added advantage. We're running a little prize draw today for this lovely bottle of champagne, or if you prefer a box of chocolates or indeed an Amazon voucher, we can ship that off instead. So I'll be picking the winning tip at the end of the webinar, and actually at that live before we finish. And we'll just get going. We're asking the question in the chat room in a few words. What is your view on chatbots, FAQs, and virtual assistants? We've got some interesting comments coming through. Christy said she saw a great demo of where FAQs can be used with social media to provide an automated response, which is good for consistency, but human approval is needed to release it to the customer, which sounds like a good example of both personal touch and automation. Craig warns, don't try and eat the elephant whole. Use data on transactions to ensure you're modeling FAQs and track chatbot transactions accordingly. Do it continually, constantly manage and review. So I guess that's always a challenge when stuff doesn't get reviewed. And we were talking just before the webinar started about some of the dangers of not reviewing that. So if you can keep those responses coming into the chat room. Just going to launch a poll before we get going, and I just want to ask the question about why do you need to reduce call volumes? If you just like to vote, and you can vote on more than one thing, is it cost pressures? Is it because you're struggling to achieve service levels? Is it because you need to improve the customer experience? Is it because you need to move callers to self-service? Or is it you've got broken processes that you need to fix? So perhaps you pick the top couple or top three that apply to you. Phil, which one do you expect likely to come up top on?
I've got a feeling it's going to be cost pressures. At the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if struggling to achieve service levels features quite highly as well.
Well, let's have a look at the results. We'll share those up on the screen now. And it looks like the reasons for is actually improving the customer experience is top there. Moving customers to self-service. That's a little surprising for me there. Rich, what's your view on that?
Both of those are surprising to me as well, but heartening to see. Customer experience, I think, is critical for enterprises as they implement technologies to drive cost reductions and improve service levels and shift callers from long, costly, laborious interactions to more efficient and intuitive interactions. So it's some interesting results there for sure.
Indeed, and surprisingly, cost pressures come in at number 3. Struggling to achieve service levels is number 4, and the lowest there is the need to fix broken processes. So hopefully fixing processes is a thing that a lot of people have tried already. So I'm just going to pass the baton now. And Phil, if you'd like to share with us some of your thoughts about what we can be doing to improve or to reduce the number of inbound calls coming into the contact center.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you very much. Yeah, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for signing into this webinar this afternoon. So just a quick introduction from myself. My name is Phil Anderson. I am Head of Best Practice at the Forum now and Program Lead for the Professional Planning Forum. So for those of you who aren't sort of clear on what the Forum do, we've got 3 key communities. So the Professional Planning Forum, Data Analytics and Insight, and Quality and Customer Experience. And what we're proud of that we're setting out to achieve is professionalizing these support functions. And what we mean by professionalizing, we want to have accreditation for our individuals, we want standards for the teams, and we want qualifications. So we've got a degree now for each of these key communities with Ulster University. We also provide training in each of these areas as well. But we are a member organisation, and our main aim is to acknowledge and recognise the great work that our members are doing and sharing their stories to raise standards in customer operations. So yes, today's webinar, I was asked by Jonty to put something together around how do we reduce inbound calls, and you can see here are some of the 4 things that I thought would crop up. I must admit, I thought cost might come up a little bit more prominently on that previous poll, because again, it feels like a lot of organisations are under the same annual pressure of doing more with less. Every year, it's all about reducing headcount, and again, how's that going to be done? Let's reduce the headcount by reducing the number of inbound calls, and so we won't need as many people. Second to that becomes customer experience and choice, channel of choice. And I think these are the important ones. Again, it's good that they've featured quite highly in that poll, because again, from a customer experience, it's sometimes seen that we want to remove some of the unnecessary inbound calls. Therefore, we need to find appropriate alternatives so that people have a better experience, better interaction with our organisation to hopefully do more with less effort. And yes, there's an awful lot at the moment around choice, channel of choice. I think it's important that we don't force a customer down a channel just because we feel that's more appropriate for us. What I think is important is that we provide options for customers, because people are doing things via the mobile phones now, and therefore they want to be able to do things in different ways than the traditional voice channel. The other thing that I thought I'd raise on this one is about colleague experience. I think often our people, our frontline advisors who are taking calls, know the most. So actually we don't pull upon their strength enough to say, actually, can we reduce some of these things by maybe looking at process changes? And again, for those wanting to improve service levels, I put in this little quote at the bottom here, taken from one of our articles around analysis and understanding of our customer, along with the volatility of our workloads, can help us actually get a better strategy around handling our contacts in the first place, because actually sometimes it's just poor planning that is causing us to look like we're actually taking more calls than we probably should. So I'm going to have a quick look at sort of 4 areas really, which for me are 4 key steps that we need to look at if we want to reduce our inbound calls. And that starting point is to know where our calls are coming from. Then to ask ourselves, what do we want? Because actually, you might start moving people to one thing, but actually that creates a problem. That could actually make things worse for you. So it's really important we understand that sort of seesaw effect. Truly understand what are the alternatives, and then again, understand the impact. Because again, you can be robbing Peter to pay Paul if you make the wrong decisions. So think of that first question: where are your inbound calls coming from? I can see there's quite a variety of organizations dialed in today. So there'll be all different types of calls will be coming from different ways, but typically there will be some sort of cyclical and seasonality involved in there. You'll have different times of the year that will be busier than others. And I think it's important that we understand why that is. So I know many years ago, those in the water industry would find that the annual billing was particularly busy. But now as more homes have gone to water meters, actually that peak is now spread out amongst a year, so therefore they don't have that surge in demand. Likewise, another big example of something that happens annually is with UCAS. So every year in August, there's a Thursday in August whereby the A-level results come out and then there's clearing. Again, a number of years ago, I think it's about 2010, 2011, they really got hit and really got caught out with those calls. But since then, they've managed that peak better by doing different things, and that's controlled the inbound calls, inbound contacts as it is now. We're using the different channels, and therefore they're able to deal with that surge in demand. But I think it's really important that we do map out all of those busiest times. So think annually, then take it down to your month as well to find if there's a monthly pattern in there, then look at the weekly profile as well, busiest day of the week, and then take it down to the busiest hour of the day as well in some instances, because again all of these things are going to help us to be able to plan. So always think of your known knowns. If we know people are going to call and we know when it's going to happen, we need to do something with it, or do we need to take it somewhere else? Now, other reasons people could be calling you are things like from a regulatory or security and compliance perspective. It could be from a launching of a new product or changing price. And again, this is an interesting one. I've been changing price because you may be changing your costs or sales. Also consider your competitors as well, because that obviously could impact the market. You've obviously got marketing as well. There's other external factors like the weather, and also just think pestle as well. So in terms of political, economical, social, technological, legal and environmental factors that could influence your business. And then finally, a little point down here at the bottom, we've got confusion. Customers are confused. There's complexity either with your process or within literature or within the marketing or something that's been sent out and customers can't find that answer. And again, too often when customers are in that situation, they're still thinking about calling you because they want an instant reply. And also it's very important to remember that customers do like to interact with other humans to get these answers. So I'd say as a starting point, do really understand where all your inbound calls are coming from. So from that, you can then start to say, actually, do we want all of these? Which calls do we want? Which calls do we stop that are just completely unnecessary? What are the alternatives? Because if people are wanting to reach out to us, what are the alternatives for them? And how can we control those? So let's have a little think about some of those then. So again, process changes are often one of the things that can really support the customer journey. So again, once you've looked at planning where all your calls come from, then also look at that end-to-end customer journey. And when we talk about end-to-end customer journey, we're thinking about actually before the customer's even thought of you, okay, how are they understanding how to contact you as a business? How are they getting first understanding where your brand name is there, if it's sales or service, and then how easy is it for them to contact you? What is the literature and the information and communication like that they then receive for how they know how to interact with you in the future? So we really need to map all of that out from the start of that journey to the end. If there's a renewal cycle in there, how do you get repeat business from them? You've got to think of all of those. Do think all the way across that journey and what happens at the end as well. If at the end, is it easy for them then to drop off, or actually do you spend as much effort on trying to get rid of a customer because actually they need to close down accounts and speak to multiple departments? So you need to think of the process from an inbound call perspective. You also need to think about the back office as well. We had a great example from one of our public service organisations a couple of years ago who used to typically see calls queuing in their inbound section and take people from the back office to answer the calls and the inbounds, when actually those calls were being driven because the back office was understaffed. They knew that if their back office service level exceeded 10 days, people were now calling, and that was that interdependency. So it's really important to understand processes. So one of the alternatives, again, could be around introducing something like self-serve or introducing different channels. Again, self-serve via something like IVR can be very, very useful. So I know a number of the telephone communications organisations have brought in self-serve for mobile phone top-up, because actually it was very transactional. Customers wanted to just dial in, pay £10, £15, whatever, and then use their phone again. Very, very simple. There's no need for human interaction in that example. We've got some other great examples of companies using natural IVR. So I know TalkTalk, one of our Innovation Award finalists back in 2014, whereby they used natural language. So customers could ring up and just say what was their issue, what was their account details, and then using intelligent information about where their customer's CRM system, they understood what products they already had, so therefore what could some of the issues be. Therefore, they would either give them the right message to hear, so let's say there's an outage in their area, that may be the reason why they're calling. There's then no need to go through to their to the area. At the same time, it's being mindful that things like IVR and websites are great when they work. They only add to customer frustration when they've not been reviewed regularly, they're not up to date, or they don't provide the seamless service they require. Next thing on here is about that predicting of customer behaviours, which I think falls into that artificial intelligence piece. But just thinking first about how we can better plan for what our customers are doing. Do we know what those touch points are for when they first contact us? When are they next likely to contact us again? And actually, could we proactively manage that or control it to therefore prevent too many inbound calls or too many inbound contacts? So do understand the number of contacts per customer will take. So yeah, better planning can support a reduction in those inbound calls by reducing abandoned calls and repeat calls. Again, taking that one step further, I think what's going to be really interesting it's already started with some organisations, but what we're going to start seeing more is about how artificial intelligence and robotics can really aid that customer journey and how it really starts to predict those people patterns. If I use the example of Amazon, I think it's an easy example to use because there'll be a lot of Amazon customers, I'm sure, listening here. Often we all know what we've used on Amazon. You can then see what things you've been browsing for recently, and it even starts flashing up things like, are you ready to purchase this product again? Now, I believe those percentages are quite low in how quick they're getting it, but again, they're going to slowly churn their business from a buying to a shipping business to a predictive shipping those products, and then you only send back what you don't want, which really does start to turn that customer behavior on its head. So you do need to think around what the alternatives are. Don't just jump in thinking, oh, we need to buy a new piece of technology, oh, we need to introduce new channels. Do think about process, customer journey, and do think of planning as well. So one of the other things I wanted to talk about was then about understanding the impact. Again, we can sometimes get a little excited when it comes about introducing a new piece of technology and the ROI is built on, oh, we're going to reduce the number of calls coming in. But actually, we really need to understand what is going to be that true impact to our customer, our colleagues, and our company. So again, here, there's a couple of examples here about sometimes we want to improve the speed of transaction or interaction because we believe that speed and right first time is going to improve that customer experience and net promoter score. Okay, it sounds obvious, it might not do though. We need to be really clear on that. But in doing something like that, that in turn is going to have a huge impact on the handle time for the calls that can come through to the contact centre. And again, you've got two examples here. One, you can either dumb down the role. So actually all the good calls that people used to like to take are no longer coming through. So you now only got simple, very sort of transactional calls, which again, doesn't really give any fulfillment to someone taking those calls. So again, what ends up happening, those people end up leaving. So you've now got higher attrition than you thought. So now you've got a bigger cost base to deal with. So you no longer you may reduce the calls, but improve your cost. Likewise, if you remove all those simple transactions and therefore only complicated calls are going to come in, you end up then with a very different staffing demographic. Because as we all know, low utilization people are going to cost more. If you've got long handle times but still got the same service level, people are going to be underutilized because of that random arrival patterns of calls and the variability of those handle times. Again, these people who now need to know so much information will need additional training and coaching. So again, training programs are going to take longer. That in turn could lead to recruitment being harder, because you now need to find a different type of person who can come in. Time to competency could be much longer. So again, that sort of seesaw effect, as it can be sometimes called, actually is going to cost you more because you've not mapped out the true impact in the first instance. Ideally, you're going to think through all of those. So don't just think about the customer service, which is great if that improves. Do think about all of those other factors as well, because what you may decide is that actually, though you might want to give 10 out of 10 customer experience, actually we can only afford 8 out of 10 because of the cost to our business and our current infrastructure with our colleagues. So yes, in sort of summary then, what I think are some of the key things that you need to consider when it comes to reducing inbound call volumes before you go in looking at other solutions is the first and foremost is to understand how you can plan better. How can you control what you've currently got? How do you understand your customer? And have you got the right processes in place and the right technology platforms to support that seamless customer journey? Use your people to drive ideas to stop doing the dumb things that unfortunately all businesses can be guilty of doing. Improve internal processes and improve communication methods with your customer. Once you've done that, you'll get to your baseline of actually now where is our baseline of calls? Do we now still need to reduce? Or does this now open up alternatives for us to provide different channels of choice? Remember, those channels of choice should be led from our customer, not just from us telling our customer what to do. Again, we've got a great example of that of one of our members still uses the fax machine for one of their countries that they deal with, because that is the most favourable channel of choice right now. So again, they've got a fax machine in the corner, which you just don't see. Service level 24 hours, you just hear this sort of paper being printed off every now and again. But if that's what the customer wants to do, they need to honour that, or they could lose those customers. And then, yeah, really consider the impact. So again, what I would strongly recommend is write that problem statement of what is the problem with your current state of calls, then start to understand actually what would be a seesaw effect if we made the change. Because ideally what we're after is that slipstream effect. If we think of the sort of the peloton, like the bike at the front, we want that lead in the way. So a change in providing maybe a new channel or an alternative way of reducing the calls is providing a slipstream effect, which improves customer service, employee satisfaction, and obviously business bottom line key performance indicators. Hopefully I've still got just a few minutes. I can share just a couple of other sort of member stories that we've got from this year's Innovation Awards. So Legal & General were one of our Innovation Award winners this year, and what they did was just harness the ideas from their frontline staff to generate ideas. This in turn improved process changes, which again had a huge reduction in calls. It improved first-time resolution, and it also improved employee satisfaction. And as we all know, happy staff mean happy customers. Another really interesting case study from Shop Direct. So again, I'm sure people know Shop Direct either through the Littlewoods brand or very.co.uk. They utilize the insight of their customer. So looking at analytics, looking at actually what their customer was doing in terms of how they used the websites, even what whereabouts they were looking on a website by using the heat maps to understand how they move their eyes around, how they use the mobile phone, and just moving the buttons on mobile phones, for instance, for things like buy now. All of those things made for a more seamless customer journey, a easier customer journey, and a huge reduction in calls. Another good example actually was up at Aegon, who employed behavioural psychologists. So therefore, the frontline advisors knew how to deal with different types of inquiries, because again, in some instances, some people needed to spend longer on a phone call, but actually having one long phone call meant they didn't need to contact again and had a great experience. So again, that implemented of ideas reduced calls, I think it was by 7% overall. And then the final one I want to touch on was actually our overall winner for this year, which was 3 Islands. So a real-time team generated loads of ideas because they could see that their ability to react to incidences on the day made a huge difference with how they would deal with inbound calls. So again, if there was an incident in a certain area, they would push out appropriate IVR messages or on hold messages. So again, help reduce calls, because sometimes people just needed peace of mind. So again, you've got to take the control, use the data that you have available, really understand your customer, take ideas from your employees, and then understand actually what are the true alternatives that you need. Just one final slide from myself is that we've got a conference at the end of this month, a one-day conference. We've got the National Planning Conference on the 28th of November, and then we've got the Quality and Customer Experience and the Insight Conference on the 29th. Both are in Chesford Grange in the Midlands. So again, hopefully Jonty will give me the email list at the end, and I can send out a little offer to all of you to hopefully come along and experience one of our events, hear from our members, our winners from our Analyst of the Year and Team of the Year awards, as well as some interesting workshops, which I think again will help follow on this topic of how to reduce some calls. We've also got some training workshops as well coming up for those who are interested. So yeah, Jonty, hopefully that was a good little start for you. Yes,
certainly. Thanks for that, Phil. And we'll you want to send out onto our post-webinar survey when we send that out. Some very good takeaways there, I think, Phil. Certainly, I've made a few notes here, and some of the ones that I particularly like there is sort of understand why people need to contact you. Write down the problem statement. What is the problem that is driving the volume of the calls there? And don't forget the channel of choice. Certainly, I'm not going to advise people rush out and buy a fax machine. But I think you're right that people have a preferred channel of choice, and we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that people have a problem. They do like to discuss that with other humans. So if that's their choice. So we're going to jump back, and we're going to start off with a little poll to start with before we jump into top tips and questions. And that poll is: what have you already tried to reduce contact volumes? Have you tried self-service? Have you tried FAQs? Have you tried improved search functionality on your website? Have you tried using a chatbot or virtual assistants? Or have you tried fixing broken processes? You can vote on more than one element on here. So Rich, we were talking about chatbots earlier. Do you think there'll be many people would have tried that?
I think that probably the volume of enterprises that have tried chatbots at this stage are fairly low in terms of a full-fledged production rollout, because of the complexity when you start to get into artificial intelligence and AI and what the reality of that is. I think there's a lot of hype around those terms and this new concept of a chatbot, when all you're really trying to do is determine intent of the customer. So I think my guess is that those are going to be a little bit lower than some of the other lower hanging fruits, to borrow an easy to use metaphor.
So let's have a look here. Sample size of 155. So 10% of the audience have already tried chatbot or virtual assistants. That's much higher than I would have expected. 63% of the audience have tried fixing broken processes. 61% self-service. 51 FAQs. And surprisingly quite low is improving search functionality on the website, because I would have thought that if you're trying to get people to self-serve, the web would be the place that people might want to go for. Right, we're going to have a look at a number of audience tips now that are coming through. So let's have a look at what's been happening in the chat room. Steve said, we heavily promote all our different channels of communicating with us equally and do not place any emphasis on one over the other. Most customers, when canvassed in focus groups, have said they like to use all the channels we offer, as each has its own benefits for the customer, depending on the time of day, subject matter, etc. And on a similar theme, Jenna has said, outline all correspondence methods on customer letters or websites. And in particular, when leaving a voicemail, we advise the client of our online chat facility. So I guess that's if we can't reach you by phone, then you offer that chat facility. I think there's danger though, Phil, on that one, that if they're leaving a voicemail, I suppose this is if you're leaving a voicemail for them, then you can advise in the chat facility. Do you think that's a good idea?
I think it can be a good idea, and I'm sure Gemma wouldn't have put that on there if it's not working for them. I think it can definitely work. I can just imagine the dangers of it not working and creating a lot more frustration. I can imagine, someone thinking, oh, I'll go and use the chat, they type in to say it, and then the person that receives that chat can't bring up that customer's records, etc., and it can create a frustration. But the principle of it, absolutely, it should work. So I think in that sort of ideal world, I think it's interesting on actually the first part of that tip as well, Jonty, if you don't mind me mentioning that, outline and correspondent methods on customer letters and websites, what you can do. I think there's always that danger if you send a letter out to your customers saying, whatever you do, please do not call us. They're going to go, oh, I need to ring them. I've got something on my mind. And it's that little reminder of subliminal ringing. So I think you always need to be careful how you position all correspondence. But again, I'm sure that's what Gemma's leading to.
Indeed. So an interesting one from Alan. It sounds obvious, but within the IVR on wait messages, direct customers to websites or other avenues of self-service. Rich, I think there's a danger, though, if you're saying on wait messages, why don't you try our website? Is that often the people are phoning you is because they've looked on the website already?
Yeah, I think that it's certainly important to manage the experience and share with customers all of the options that are available. But typically, if the customer is picking up the phone and called, chances are fairly likely that they've attempted self-service on the website, or they have a perception that self-service on the website or in the mobile app can't help them, and so they feel that they need to call. So in general, I think this is probably important, but may or may not make a substantive difference in the breakdown of contact deflection.
And Craig has said, and I think this ties in with Bill's point, build a clear and well-considered disposition schema, which I guess is to like wrap-up codes. This means you can easily classify inbound queries and understand the best methods and the best channels to manage them. I like that. Steve said, never influence a customer to using a particular channel of communication. It's their choice. Let them make it. We thrive as a business by giving the customer the option at every opportunity. So I guess self-service, if you want to increase the take up self-service, is actually make sure you make self-service as simple as possible for the user. And one of the things that we've often found is that making stuff simple for the user actually involves often a very high degree of complexity within the organization. So it might look simple, but there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes. Tamsin has said, I think the chatbots, FAQs, and virtual assistants will be great for organizations to improve business opportunities. It makes people more self-sufficient and gives you access to help at any time from anywhere and not during business hours. And certainly that's one area I think of extending the hours could be very good. Chris has said, use design thinking to develop new approaches. And Phil, I've not seen a huge amount on design thinking. I've certainly seen a thing of looking at where systems break down, systems thinking. I don't know if design thinking is similar to systems thinking.
I think it is. Now, it's not a methodology the forum use because we're very much into outcomes. And I think sometimes with design thinking and system thinking, you can end up creating those little silos. I would advocate using many methods. I think that's what's important. You want to create lots of different contexts. You want to complete different perspectives so you can compare what would be those overall outcomes. So yeah, my tip would be don't use one. I think design thinking is definitely an appropriate approach sometimes.
We've got a question from Craig who said, how do you cope with the problem of channel hopping? I've talked a lot to a lot of customers about the problem where people initially hit digital channels, can't find their answer, and then end up phoning anyway. And I guess one of the challenges here is that then all the information about what they were looking through gets lost. Rich, I guess there's a technological angle behind this.
Absolutely. I think there are some very key technological components that I'll actually try to touch on briefly later. But it's important to ensure that a customer's experience is consistent across any channel, so that so that they don't get used to, well, I always get my answer when I pick up the phone and call, that they get the same experience and the same answer and the same self-service capability when possible across any channel. And it's important also to maintain the customer's context. As I said earlier, we all collect a lot of data about our customers, including in the moment, in their journey, and it's important to use that data to inform the next experience if they do choose to hop channels in midstream.
Indeed, and we've got a couple more tips before we move on. Ricky has said aggressive real-time monitoring is also a key. If there are any pending calls, emails, voicemails, etc., this can be informed by a specialist to the agent. The agent is readily available to handle the query. If not, assign a concierge to it. So that looks like a kind of like a manual core distribution method. Another one from Steve. I think Steve is looking to get the winning tip from the number of tips sent in. Our commitment to first contact resolution helps keeping calls down to a manageable level. We see a surge in inbound traffic when we have an influx of new starters due to a lack of process knowledge. We ensure extra callers are available during these times, as we do live chats and emails to compensate. So I guess that's about building, I like this two pieces of it: first contact resolution, and also building up the process knowledge of people. And Phil, I think that's a really good one.
Yeah, absolutely. I did touch on that as one of the conclusions. You've got to think of that time to competency. If there's a lot of complex things that need to be learned, yes, that can lead to mistakes from agents. It can make it difficult for when they first start, and that call times can be very, very long. So yeah, you've got to consider that. So it's another very good point raised by Steve.
So we're going to ask another question in the chat room, and that is, what is stopping you from implementing or improving digital self-service? We saw, I think it was about 60% of people have already tried self-service as a way of reducing contact volumes. And certainly when we did one of the interesting things we found a while ago was that we asked a question on when did you last change your IVR? And I think we had something like 15% of the audience hadn't changed the IVR from the time it was installed. So quite worrying. So what is stopping you from implementing or improving digital self-service? We'll come back to your thoughts on that. But just going to pass the baton now across to Rich Garrett from Jacada. And Rich will be looking through a number of different strategies on how to reduce contact volumes, and also the role that technology can play within that. So Rich, if you'd like to put the slides up on your screen, you can see them there.
Absolutely.
Full screen. There we are.
Thank you very much, Jonty. As I mentioned, at Jacada, we bring technological solutions to bear to help enterprises drive digital adoption for their customers and use that digital adoption to improve customer experience, but more importantly, to reduce contact volume for all the benefits that provides. And so I'll be talking a little bit about that today. And I wanted to thank Phil for setting up a lot of great concepts that we actually do very specifically try to address with our solutions and our customers. So if I could touch very briefly on how we see the problem. Even though enterprises, as we've discussed and shared top tips and questions and things today, have made several different attempts to improve self-service, to reduce call volumes, and to try and help that overall experience for their customers, there's still, by and large, a low adoption of self-service. We see in the industry, and there are some industry analysts that observe that upwards of 80% of customer interactions still end up in the contact center for various reasons. Companies have tried implementing FAQs, as we've discussed today, but they generally, FAQs very specifically, are information only. They don't provide an actual interaction or a transaction for that consumer to accomplish a task. They may tell them, well, these are the things that you have to do to go accomplish the task on your own, but they don't actually help them accomplish that task. And then I think someone pointed out the problem that if they're not refreshed, or if they become too unwieldy and complex, it becomes difficult for the customer to find that answer. Companies have even tried to implement self-service in the website itself, in that experience, guiding customers through accomplishing a task. Very often those are limited, and certainly sometimes they break for outlying cases, and that becomes very difficult. Companies have implemented chat to try and keep contacts away or keep calls out of the call center. But very often, as Phil indicated, that creates an ancillary effect of driving up contacts that aren't as useful or aren't as helpful for the customer. Companies have also implemented VAs, and we've talked about this earlier, VAs, and now this concept of a chatbot. The challenge that we've seen with virtual assistants and chatbots is that they tend to simply replicate the problem of the other attempts. They're either very informational focused and very difficult, similar to some legacy or non-refreshed IVR experiences. It's very difficult to understand why your customers' changing needs and changing motivations are causing them to reach out to contact you. And so you end up being unable to, the virtual assistant or the chatbot ends up being unable to help them because it's purely informational and it lacks that transactional intelligence and capability. What this is exacerbated, I think, by challenges within the contact center itself. As again, others have mentioned, different agents and different channels or different skill sets or different groups are empowered differently across the experience. So if a customer has a specific problem A, and they get to a group of agents in chat who aren't empowered to help them with that problem, or they go to the website and they're not empowered in that website space to find that answer, they end up picking up the phone and calling. And the agents struggle to resolve that customer's contact in the first instance, and maybe that generates even more frustration and repeat calls. And the same thing from a back office process perspective. I think it was someone pointed out that, you know, if you've got a 10-day lag or in your back office processing, then that very specifically, and it must have been Phil, very specifically generates a significant upsurge in inbound contact. So when you have manual processes at each end of the customer interaction and customer service spectrum, those all tend to generate increased calls and poor customer experience. So from a Jacada perspective, we attempt to look at the customer journey from end to end and try to resolve automation that delivers self-service and contact deflection, call deflection, at each point in that journey. From a digital self-service perspective, we want to utilize solutions for delivering automation in both the web and the voice channels to keep callers in that digital channel and lower average handle time and drive adoption of mobile assets that the company may have adopted already and tried to implement, but we want to expand the usage and the success of those digital assets. And we do this, and I'll explain this very briefly, through implementing visual IVR capabilities, as well as a very advanced intelligent and transactional chatbot capability. Then moving backwards, we look to implement technological solutions based on lightweight but very profound integration with back-end systems to drive automation and simplify agent processes so that you reduce repeat calls by improving first contact resolution and improving the customer experience, which then helps them engage in that digital self-service solution that you've implemented in the first instance. And finally, from a back office perspective, again, how can we drive automation to deliver and then expose that automation rather to the customer in the first instance, expanding self-service capability on the web, expanding self-service capability in the app, if you've implemented an app, and in the voice and text channels. How do we do this from a platform perspective? We have what we call the Jacada Interact platform. And Jacada, if I could step back in time a little bit, Jacada was founded about 25 years ago, and we've spent most of that time developing an integration middleware layer that allows us to connect very easily and with a lightweight touch to any and all backend systems, including very old mainframe or green screen type terminals that then, if we can interact with those systems, allows us to stitch together processes in what we call RPA or bots that drive automation, again, on the back end to improve customers' ability to understand when they've accomplished that task, that task is successful. For example, paying a bill and seeing the immediate results of that bill appear in their website so that they don't have to wait 3 days and then pick up the phone and call complaining that they haven't seen their balance change. We can then take those bots, that automation, and expose them to customers, either via a visual IVR experience, shifting them from a voice call to a digital experience that's much more rich and much more robust and drives better self-service and customer experience, as well as to a chatbot type of experience, utilizing that same logic that's designed from the Interact platform for automating processes and exposing that to a digital visual experience as well as to a text-based experience by understanding in a natural way, utilizing natural language communication, what a customer's intent is and identifying the best outcome and the best answer for them and getting them the resolution the first time. And then just touching on again real briefly, utilizing again that automation and that guidance to help agents resolve that customer's issue the first time to prevent those repeated calls. So I'll give a very quick example of what this concept of shifting customers from a voice-based experience to a digital-based experience looks like and why that's important. Traditional IVRs, as we know, are typically touch-tone. We press buttons and nobody likes them and they're very difficult to use and they're very coarse-grained in their ability to understand why a customer is reaching out to us. If we can send the customer an SMS message, have them tap on a link that provides them with a small website, as you'll see on the right-hand side of the screen, something very simple, very intuitive from a user experience perspective, it allows us to utilize the devices that are ubiquitous, that we all have, to identify intent in a very precise way and allow us to expose not only net new transactions and processes that we can bring to bear to allow customers to accomplish tasks on their own, but it allows us also to reuse and repurpose the assets that enterprises have already invested in. For example, the knowledge that is valuable in FAQs, the self-service tasks that have been already built and rolled out to the mobile web or to the main desktop website, and get customers into a much more robust process end-to-end, again, identifying intent, for example, seeing their balance, which is very informational, but typically when a customer wants to see what their balance is, that doesn't necessarily drive self-service. That drives the next question. Well, I know that I see that my bill's so high, but perhaps I need to change my plan. Well, rather than pass them to an agent to help them change the plan when they've seen the information or heard the information about their balance as well, let's give them the ability to do that very simply, very efficiently, and very intuitively on the screen. And we make sure that the context that we know about the customer's journey, maybe they started online and then had to pick up the phone and call, we can recognize what they've done online and use that to inform a better and more personalized experience in a visual IVR world, in a visual IVR experience. We can already short circuit a lot of the intent identification processes and get them right to the first step in resolving what we know is their problem at that point in time. I'll highlight very quickly from a technology perspective, we can work with your native app if you have one already rolled out. So the same type of technology can be exposed within the native app, or there's not an app required to download. We can work straight with standard smartphone and connected devices. Touching very briefly on the concept of a chatbot and how we can take the same application logic in that's deployed from a visual experience, we can deploy that also in a conversational style, because some customers choose to chat or message. We all have seen the proliferation of messaging apps such as Facebook, WhatsApp, even iMessage that comes standard with the iPhone. One of our audience here today, I think, mentioned it's critical to allow customers the choice of what channel they choose to interact on. And we at Jacada feel very strongly that same thing. It's important to deliver them a consistent experience no matter what channel or what method they choose to communicate with an enterprise on. So how can we intercept chat requests, contact requests as well with a bot experience, utilize a natural language interface to allow a customer to express in their own words and in their own way what they're having a problem with, what they're interested in accomplishing today or learning about, and guiding them through that process to learn more information, to make a change to their plan, to purchase a new product, or to resolve a problem with their service. Once we do that, then we can help the agent resolve the problem if there's an escalation, which we try to avoid, but we can resolve that problem using the context in the first instance, again, avoiding repeat calls, which keeps the overall contact volume down. And I think finally, if we've got the ability to expose in a very passive, or rather a very reactive way, automation and a rich digital experience to callers when they call in or when they reach out to you on the website, well, we can also expose that in a very proactive way. If we have an event, say a service outage, or we know that a customer's minutes are about to run out, or that we know that their package is about to be delayed and we need to reschedule when we need to deliver it, we can proactively reach out to a customer, either via the app or via a message that gets them into a digital experience that allows them to solve that issue before it becomes a problem, before the customer sees a difficulty, becomes frustrated and picks up the phone to reach out to call and wants to talk to an agent. We can proactively intercept that issue, resolve the customer before they even know there's a problem, and maintain a very positive relationship as well as a call deflection. Very briefly, a little bit about how this works. We have the Interact platform uses a concept of management of this robotic process automation, or these bots. We have very robust business-oriented tools and administrative interfaces that allow business and process owners, rather than simply IT programmers and engineers, to develop robust experiences that deliver self-service to customers through rapid, easy integration into back-end systems and existing infrastructure. Again, utilizing NLP and cognitive API where you may have it in place, or we're able to provide those solutions for you as well. We use existing content, knowledge bases, and repositories, and expose those solutions, those transactions, and those communication capabilities across all different touch points, whether it be the desktop, the mobile app, mobile device, or messaging services. Very briefly, looking at different types of case studies and different types of scenarios where this type of digital solution and digital shift in experience to drive contact deflection has been successful in the past. We see across the board anywhere between 3 to 5 or upwards of 10 to 15, 10 to 20% in contact reduction by delivering improved self-service capability, not only through delivering more robust and more frequent transactional capability, but also delivering that transactional capability in a very positive, very rich experience for the customer. That enables and incents the customer to resolve the problem the first time, but it also encourages the customer to, the next time they have an issue or a problem, reuse that self-service channel, because it becomes, in the end, much simpler and much more efficient for the customer to work with a digital asset rather than sit on the phone and try and navigate through to talk to a human. So we see not only an initial contact reduction with first contact resolution and better digital self-service, but we see an ongoing knock-on effect where in the future callers tend to shift their behavior and shift away from, well, I always know that I get my resolution when I pick up the phone and speak with someone, to, oh, I'll just do it this way because I know that if I navigate through this visual experience, I can get my problem resolved easily. And in fact, I get a better result than I would have if I had to sit around and talk with someone. So we've seen great success with that, and certainly at any point in the future, I'd be happy to spend more time talking with you about specific cases where we've done this that may be applicable to your enterprise and industry. Wrapping up and trying to be efficient as possible, we look to reduce inbound call volumes utilizing our technology to deliver self-service based on digital experiences and light touch, easy integration by 10% or more. Reducing the overall average handle time and processing time for customers, and improving that customer experience to drive first contact resolution by 30 seconds or greater. And at the end of the day, deliver better self-service experiences to reduce the need for customers to contact you in the first instance. All from one core platform that provides a business view and focus on reporting and that process and customer experience logic. And that's what I wanted to say today. Hopefully that was useful for you, and I would love to speak with you more in detail about any of these topics. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for that, Rich. I think some quite key takeaways there. Certainly shift across to digital channels for self-service, I think, is a really key part of it. I think one of the other takeaways I've written down here is about automating back-end processes with things like robotic process automation. I think one of the most fascinating points there is that customers will learn what is the best way to get their problem resolved. So if your self-service is that best way, they'll use it. If it's the telephone, customers will use that. So it really is that the channel of choice will be what the customer believes is their best way of getting their problem resolved. So I think that's a fascinating takeaway when it comes to designing self-service, and perhaps something that will help that increase. Let's have a look at the what's coming through in the chat room. Lots of stuff going through. Charlotte has said, any tips on how to gain the required investment to improve processes, e.g. improve self-service functionality, up-to-date email management systems, etc. Has anyone any experience in creating a business case and successfully convincing management to make the recommended changes? Rich, presumably you're doing an awful lot of this.
That's what I do most days, is help our clients and partners work up a business case that says, look, if we've got this much contact volume, you can then take that contact volume and break it down into specific types. Someone mentioned it's very important to have accurate disposition status. That is very critical because it helps you develop the business case. We have contact types A, B, and C. We know that we have the systems in place to automate contact types A, B, and C. If we do that, we can build a funnel of how many we think we can automate. And at the bottom of that funnel, that represents what our cost savings will be. And you can then take that cost savings, balance it against the cost of implementing the solution, and show senior management how you can deliver savings with a little bit of spend, based on hard numbers rather than I think this would happen.
Well, I'm going to do a little bit of a plug for Call Center Helper now. And if you've noticed on the front page, we've got our contact center manifesto, which says don't do anything in your contact center. You've done your 10 things. Number 8 here is write the business case. Perfect. And we've got a whole range of different experts who gave their advice, one of which is to look at something called customer lifetime value, but I won't, we put a link to that in the chat room. An audience tip: always educate your customer on the available avenues of obtaining information. If people aren't aware, they cannot adapt self-service. So Phil, I think that's quite an interesting one of keeping people aware.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it comes down to that marketing, communication, and ultimately understanding. Do your customers truly understand your business and those methods? Yeah, don't have web chat that's only on some of the time, because it's never going to form the pattern of play for people to use it. If you've got it, use it, have it open all of the time and create those routines. But yeah, I think it's really important that communication and understanding, you take your time on that so people know how to contact the quickest way, easiest way, etc.
And there it says, hold a workshop with frontline agents to review your disposition or outcome codes, sometimes known as wrap-up codes, which will be one of the ways you will statistically determine your call types. Incidentally, that's also very good for building your business case. Look at the codes, consider the consistency of use, think about how much are being focused in on training, continually assess if they are reflective of why customers are calling. Robert said, we found a high number of follow-up calls from client call centers we've taken over, so it sounds like an outsourcer. We've been successful by sending clients to a unique URL link to their issue log that is updated continually. This allows customers to monitor progress when they wish, which seems to make them more relaxed, especially as they can see that a matter is progressing. So I think certainly that's a good one of keeping customers informed in terms of progress. Steve says, educate the customer on every call they make into us helps cut down the customer's need to call us unduly. We reduce call volumes in this way by challenging each member of the team to educate the customer along the way, but always ensure it's relevant. We've got time for one more tip. Understand what drives repeat contacts and use training and process improvements to reduce repeat calls. So, Rich, I guess that repeat contact resolution, first contact resolution, reducing repeat contacts is quite a key strategy.
This is it. If customers are contacting you in large volumes about a specific issue or a set of related issues, then let's find a way to automate that issue to empower customers to help themselves. Let's utilize an understanding of disposition codes, of chat transcripts to understand what those problems are and resolve them.
So if we've almost reached the top of the hour, if you could fill in our post-webinar survey and see if we've done first webinar resolution for you. It's only 4 questions long. If you'd like a demonstration of the Jacada software as part of that survey, if you'd like to fill in that box, we've got a replay available later on this afternoon. And finally, just going to share with you the winning tip, which actually was won by Steve, but I think is probably the best one. The commitment to FCR, keeping calls to a managing level, and also training people on process knowledge. We're going to be back next Thursday for looking at how technology can improve the contact center. Just like to say thank you very much to Phil from the forum. Thank you, Phil.
No problem at all. Thank you.
And thanks to Rich from Jacada. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you all very much.
And thank you to everyone in the audience, and we'll see you all again next Thursday. Thank you then. Bye-bye all. Bye-bye.